Hello and welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options, and not having a clear plan is the enemy. And using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to exit highly appreciated businesses or real estate, save a failed 1031 exchange, cryptocurrency, so you can create and preserve more wealth or help your clients, friends, and family do the same. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swartz. I'm also the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. I'm also a multifamily broker here in Sacramento. And in today's episode, I'm focusing on a closed deferred sales trust and multifamily brokerage transaction taking place here in Sacramento, California, actually out of Placerville, California, just up towards about halfway to Lake Tahoe as you're moving from Sacramento. It's a place called Placerville, and this deal starts about really about 12 years ago when I first met and contacted the owners of this property, and they had done a 1031 exchange out of a property in Manhattan Beach. And they bought the property for about $1.2 million here in Sacramento, and they saw a gain of about $2.5 million. So they had a huge gain there. And over the years too, when you do a 1031 exchange, remember that your basis travels. And so their biggest challenge was, this capital gains tax liability. In fact, in this deal itself, the stats are this: it was a $2.5 million sales price. They had a little bit of debt of about $30,000. They had a adjusted basis of about $600,000. And so they're looking at a gain of approximately $1.9 million. And so if you take the math there, $2.5 million minus the $600,000, they're looking at $1.9 million. So the gain is important. And then the percentages are also important. 20% federal tax would be due if they didn't do some kind of deferral mechanism or strategy, such as a deferred sales trust or a 1031 exchange on federal taxes. And then you have about 13.3% state of California, 3.8% Obamacare tax. And then I like to add about 3% on average. It could also be higher. It could be as much as 5 or 7 or 10% on the depreciation recapture. In this scenario, let's use about 3. So adding all of those up, it's about 40%, which is about $760,000 of liability. So I always want to start with what is the challenge that we're trying to solve, and that is that tax liability. But that's just the fiscal reason or the financial reasons to defer tax. There's also the personal reasons to sell. And this particular client of mine, we sat down and we just looked at their overall vision for their time, energy, and wealth. And they're moving from kind of phase one of a wealth accumulation, where they've been building and buying and managing and owning and really building up that wealth, to more of a phase two, which is more retirement, where they're looking for passive income, and they're looking for less toilets, less trash, less liability. And so, but the biggest challenge they had was, well, if we sell, we don't want to overpay via a 1031 exchange. And so for the longest time, they didn't sell. In fact, I've told them about deferred sales trusts for years, but they were cautious and skeptical, and they had never really, seen or heard of it before. And they wanted to, kind of, I guess, see how it would play out. And so literally year after year after year, I would tell them about it, and then I would show them deal close stories, and I would, share a little bit more with them. And it, commercial real estate, I like to say it's like a religion, and the religion is mostly taught that the doctrine is just a 1031 exchange. And so we're kind of conditioned and thought from all of the industry, brokers and all of the qualified intermediaries to, just 1031 and swap until you drop. And that's kind of been the concept. But then you get a stepped up basis, which is really nice. But at a certain point, a lot of my clients are just saying, I just want to be done with all of this. There's the new rent control laws in California. There was the eviction, control with COVID-19. There's ever changing regulations and things that just create challenges, just, day to day or week to week. And just when you think there's a calm, there's something else. A tenant has a challenge, or, it never really stops. And even though they had property management, it still was a part of their energy and stress that they just said, we don't need or want to take 15 problems and move it to 30 problems. We'd like to just have 0 problems. And so enter the Deferred Sales Trust. And by the way, it wasn't easy for them. I have known them for a lot of years. I started my multifamily brokerage at Marcus and Millichap in 2006, and I think we started talking right around 2000, 8 or 9, right around there. And I didn't learn about the deferred sales trust until 2009, and even then, it took a while to really understand it. And so it took them a while to even just look at this perspective. But they attended a lot of our my masterminds, and basically it's a deferred sales trust class, and they started to really understand it. And that's really the most important thing when you're looking at the deferred sales trust or any exit plan, that you understand clearly what your options are, what the disadvantages are of different strategies, what the advantages are. So fast forward, we went into contract about a year ago with the first buyer, and everything was going great, and things were moving forward. But they got a little bit scared because of they didn't want units on top of carports. They were in San Francisco. They own a lot of properties there, and then recently the city has put changes to buildings that have units, carports below units. And so they just said, that's just too much for us. We're going to go ahead and back out. And so we went for the second buyer. And the second buyer owned in the area, very well qualified, and was ready to move forward. And then there was a permitting issue. We found out that one of the units wasn't fully permitted. And so that delayed it a little bit. And then we found out, and then all of a sudden a fire happened. There was a huge fire. So that delayed it. And then one of the partners of this particular client, his a family member passed away. And so they had to pull out. So in other words, the deal went for a long time, about 6 months, got completely delayed multiple times. And we have a saying in any kind of really mergers, acquisitions, or multifamily brokerage, that time kills deals. And this basically was kind of what happened. Like what could have went wrong went wrong, and the time just extended, and it just kind of killed the deal. So entered the third escrow, and so with perseverance, we worked through with the city the permitting challenges with the buyer and a good broker, and worked through this entire process, and finally closed just about a week ago. We're recording this here in early August. And so the outcome was really great. The buyer has an opportunity to add value and continue to increase the rents and kind of start fresh there with a new depreciation schedule. And our clients have a chance to kind of move into their phase two of their time. So let's talk about a few of the other benefits that they really enjoyed about this. First of all, it's the cash flow. Okay. So their cash flow, their NOI on the property was about $120,000, right? Income minus expenses. And they didn't have a lot of debt. And so that was kind of their cash flow there. The depreciation still had about 600,000, so they had some good tax flow going there to offset the cash flow with some depreciation. However, with the deferred sales trust, we did a rough estimate that they could pay off their debt. They could, obviously get passive and move into that phase two, but then they can increase their cash flow by about 63.8%, and we estimated that by using the net equity and the net proceeds after debt being paid off, after commissions being paid to me, there's the broker, and after a closing cost with the deferred sales trust tax attorney, and it's about $188,000, right? And so you take 120,000 divided by 188, it's about 63.8% is the increased cash flow. So they said, right, so you're telling me I could have about 60+% increased cash flow. I have no toilets, no trash, no liability. I don't have to take 15 problems and turn them into to 30 problems. And we also have some asset protection, meaning the trust, since the money's owed to us, we don't own the trust, so we have some asset protection there as well. And they said, and then as well, if we want to get back into real estate, we can whenever we want. And the answer is yes to all of those. And that's the biggest thing for people to, I think, overcome for the deferred sales trust, is it just seems like there's so many positives, but what are the disadvantages? And some of the disadvantages that they had to overcome were, but it seems expensive, right? These fees, these recurring fees, like how do we make that an investment and not an expense? Who's the third party trustee? That's our company, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. How do we know the funds are protected? And how do we know that we're going to be able to have some control, right? And you absolutely do have some control. It's indirect control. You don't have a unilateral control. And so they had to understand what that meant. And that essentially means that they have to approve of the investments, right? And they have to approve of the movement, but also the trustee does as well. And so they had to get comfortable with that. But once I explained to them that actually, if you go to a 1031 exchange accommodator, it's actually really the same thing. It's kind of just like that, except the deferred sales trust is sort of like a long-term 1031, if you think about it, where you actually earn interest while the money sits. Whereas a 1031 exchange accommodator, you give up that control. You typically don't earn money as it sits, and you pay them that fee, and then you exchange into another property. And so once we explained that and all the protections that we have in place, they got comfortable with that, right? And then with our legal team and talking with them and going through it, who had the deferred sales trust, perfect track record with the IRS audits, they get comfortable. But those are certain things that are new for them to learn, and they have been owning and managing real estate for 30 years. And so it wasn't easy, right? None of these deals are easy. If it were easy, I guess everyone would be doing it all the time. But this is why it's important to work with those that are closing these transactions. And so they put their trust in capital gains tax solutions, the trust in me to sell the property at a high price. And by the way, we got an excellent price, kind of in the mid 4 cap range, and interest rates were also rising. And so the interest rates for the buyer was able to lock in at about 4.5%. So his I think we sold about a 4.3 to 4.5 on the cap rate. So it's about even there. Rates had since he locked in about 30 days ago, had gone up some, have come back down a little bit, but overall, he has an opportunity to raise rents. Seller has an opportunity to exit, and it's a great outcome for my clients. A couple other things too is they have liquidity now as well. So part of having phase 2 retirement is having the ability to access cash if and when they want to spend it, need it. But also, you don't have to necessarily turn that trust on right away as far as paying you the income. So they live in California, and so one way to make the deferred sales trust an investment, not an expense, is to delay the trust from paying you. What does that mean? Well, you can delay it for a couple of years to not pay you, so that it's still earning interest and compounding and building up. So the balance is building for you. But if you don't take payment, you can delay your income tax on that. So another way to think about it is like a delayed tax trust. It's kind of like an IRA, it's kind of like a 401k, right? Where all of the interest is deferred and all of your income tax and capital gains tax is deferred until you start receiving payments. And so they're delaying payments for a period of time, and then they'll start receiving those payments, and that's a win-win for them. Whereas before, when you have cash flow from a property, you cannot delay the payments. Now, you do have depreciation to offset that, so that's cool. Now, with the deferred sales trust, since the depreciation is pretty low, right, and getting lower every year, if and when they do buy another property, and they also love the opportunity to, if they partner with the trust and we structure it in the correct way, that they get a brand new depreciation schedule, of which they get the majority of that depreciation. And so these are all these little nuances here that every deal has, and we really encourage you to get with us to see if the deferred sales trust can be an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth, defer your tax, but really solve the biggest challenge that a lot of our clients are facing, which is how to move from phase 1 to phase 2. And how do I do it in a way that I'm diversified? I have some liquidity. I have some options to go back into real estate if I want to, or other business ventures. How do I move out of my big primary home, cryptocurrency? How do I exit a business which doesn't even qualify for a 1031 exchange, right? And same thing with cryptocurrency or public or private stock or primary homes. And these are the things that we love to help you out with. And if you want to learn more about this, you can go to our website, and it's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and you can start your deferred sales trust today. We do give no cost consultations. However, it is important to know who the deferred sales trust works for. I mentioned a few others just a minute ago, but it also works for LP or GP interest, carried interest, artwork, cryptocurrencies, NFTs. It can save a failed 1031 exchange if you're working with a qualified intermediary that actually will accommodate. So make sure you connect with us to get connected with those that do. But also, you need to have about $1 million net proceeds and $1 million gain per transaction. So it's need to be big enough, right? So this isn't for smaller transactions. It's definitely for bigger ones, okay? Unless you have 2 at 500 each that you can combine in a short period of time. And the reason is you want to scale, and you want to make sure that your tax liability, and your equity and the fee ratio makes sense, right? And so that's certainly really important. So look for that. Hey, I so appreciate you watching this video. If you have any multifamily or real estate needs, we are connected across the country with over 80,000 agents, and we work with some of the best in the business. And here locally in Sacramento, we're multifamily experts and specialists, and we can help you exit your real estate using the deferred sales trust and or just doing traditional 1031 exchange changes. Look forward to the next video that's coming out here soon to have another Deferred Sales Trust overview. Please rate, review, subscribe. Check out the book, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. We got like people like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank will be in the book, and a number of other financial advisors, commercial real estate syndicators, and operators. And rate, review, subscribe. We so appreciate everybody who's listening and all of your support. And go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com if you want to connect further. And we look forward to talking with you